Fantastic, thank you. Well, good morning, everybody. Welcome to our first Department of Professionalism discussion panel. We're so excited to have everyone here. It's nice to see so many familiar faces and names. I'm glad you all could join us. So my name is Dr. Aimee Holdwick, for those of you who don't know me, and I'm co-hosting this today with Dr. Lamya Kamel, who is my co-host for the Department of Professionalism. So I'm going to start this off, give a brief introduction, a little background, and then I'll hand it over to her and she will go work with our panelists. So thank you so much all for joining us. And thank you for our wonderful group of panelists for agreeing to do this inaugural event. So we do have the panelists up here on the screen, and you guys could all wave maybe as I go through. So Jack Miller, of course, our college president, and Vladimir Cedeño, who is a student in the acupuncture program at New York, and he is also the student council president there. We have Dr. Carey Clark, who is the director of the nursing program for Pacific College, and Kiera Nagle, who's the director for the massage therapy program at the New York campus. And we have Dr. Tulia Rubero, who is on faculty at the Chicago campus in the acupuncture program. So thank you guys so much for being here with us today. We look forward to hearing your thoughts about professionalism. And before we get started, whoops, a little ahead with my slides. Before we get started with the panel itself, I wanted to give you guys just a little bit of background about the department and let you know some of the things that we've been working on. So this department was first formed in spring of last year, spring of 2019. But there was a lot of work that went into it before that. So I'd really like to thank everyone who had a hand in the groundwork leading to the formation of the department, and especially to Jack and to Dr. Stacy Gomes for their continuing participation and guidance with this department. We've been doing a lot of things over the past year and a half, and I know there was a lot of work prior to that. A lot of you guys probably participated in the survey that we did last year. So in the spring and the fall of 2019, we put out a survey to all the faculty, students, and staff at the college, trying to get a feel for where you think professionalism is now and what you think about it. So I wanted to share just some really high-level results from that with you. So in this first slide, the one question we were interested in is, what is everyone's perception of professionalism at the college as it stands? And again, this was done last year. So we asked students, faculty, and staff about their thoughts on this. And this chart shows you how many answered always or very often to the question about seeing professionalism demonstrated in these areas and in these groups. And so here we have the student body, the faculty, the administration, the classroom, and the clinic. And this line up here is our 90% mark. So you'll see a lot of these people agreed on pretty closely. There's a little bit of difference of opinion. And one thing I think that's important to notice is we're doing pretty good with this as far as how people see professionalism exhibited at the college, which is great. But the other thing to look at is we still have some room for improvement. And this is an area where we can all have some self-growth and have some reflection. And that's kind of the whole purpose of this department. So we were formed in order to promote the development of professionalism throughout the college. And this is meant to be an institutional endeavor. It's not just about the students or one particular area. And so we really want to get all campuses and all constituents involved and build some community around this so that we can all be working towards this together. The other thing we asked people was about the different qualities they think that makes up professionalism, because it's something that's kind of hard to define. So I put together these little word clouds, and these came again from the survey. Basically, the larger words in each group are the ones that people chose more often, and they weren't given a list to choose from. People put the traits that they thought were most important. So you'll notice communication and respect were some really big things that showed up for all the different groups. And this was again across all campuses, New York, Chicago, San Diego, and online. And I summarized down at the bottom the top 5 words for each group. And you'll notice there's a lot of overlap, which was really interesting. And I also found as I was going through all of this data and wanted to make note that there were so many soft skills that were also came up over and over. things like compassion and patience and tolerance. So it was really interesting to see those things too, although they didn't necessarily show up with the same repetition. There were a lot of these overall themes. We also really wanted to have some kind of a definition of professionalism, because it's really hard to pin down. So it's something that you know when you see it. It's something that you know when you see a lack of it, but it's hard to have a really similar, concise definition for this. So we put together this working definition, and this was based on the professionalism requirements from the ACGME. So this is something that we can strive towards and something that is a bit more measurable. So representatives of the college must demonstrate a commitment to carrying out professional responsibilities, adherence to ethical principles, and sensitivity to a diverse patient, student, and staff population. We are expected to demonstrate respect, compassion, and integrity, a responsiveness to the needs of patients and society that supersedes self-interest, accountability to patients, society, and the profession, and a commitment to excellence and ongoing professional development. A commitment to ethical principles pertaining to provision or withholding of clinical care, confidentiality of patient information, informed consent, and business practices. And finally, sensitivity and responsiveness to culture, age, gender, and disabilities. So this was our definition that we came up with as a working definition. And this is something that we can now start having more conversation around. So through discussing professionalism and coming together in forums like this, we hope everyone's really motivated to learn more about this and see how you can develop this within your own sphere and how you can kind of focus on this yourself. So to that, we really wanted to get together a nice diverse group of folks from across the college representing different programs and different campuses, and just hear what people have to say about how professionalism has helped them. So with that, I will turn it over to Dr. Kamel and to the panel.
Great, thanks, Aimee. Yeah, so I think that, like Aimee said, we've been working on this definition for a while. It certainly was influenced by the ACGME, but it was very heavily influenced by the responses we got from all of the constituents that represented themselves in this survey. So it was really exciting to see how that all kind of came together and really put together a pretty lofty goal that covers a lot of different aspects of who we are. I think the practice of all of the medicines that are taught within our programs at Pacific College of Health and Sciences are multidimensional. It's not just about looking clean and showing up on time. There's so much more to that. And so I'm really excited to see that reflected in the definition, but I'm also really excited to see that reflected in the conversation we're having today. Another piece that was big in this conversation was, okay, so what is professionalism? What does that mean to you? How does that manifest in your everyday? But then also, how has that benefited you? How has that taken you to the next level? How have you grown? How has that benefited your practice? And that's really the question we posed to our different panelists today. And we wanted to kind of start with talking to them about that and then getting into like a deeper discussion. We'd love to hear what you all have to say. If you have any comments, please just put them in the chat, just so there's not too much cross chatter. But please throw them in the chat. Aimee and I will be checking in on those the whole time. And I'd love if we have time to have a little bit of conversation at the end as well. So we decided we wanted to start with having Jack kind of talk a little bit about his vision for this, this question, because he really is one of the main visionary of this department. He saw a need for it. I think we are the only school, my understanding is, within the realm of Chinese medicine in the States that has this department. So really, I think we're leaders in many ways of seeing the benefit of that. So we'd love to hear, Jack, kind of your response to this, but also your vision for what we're doing here.
Sure. Thanks, Lamya. Thanks, Aimee. Thanks, all panelists. And thanks, everybody, for coming today. This is a really important project or venture for us. I think it really will distinguish the institution, but much more importantly, will distinguish us all as individuals within the institution. Obviously, in my role as president of the college, I think a lot about what will help our students be successful. once they leave the programs that they're in. It's really probably my primary focus. And there was a lot of feedback over the years about our practice management course. And so I thought a lot about that. And I came to the realization that, as I put in, I think, the introductory email to this webinar, who you are is more important than what you know in becoming successful. Now, obviously, you need to know something, but it's, let's say, who you are is at least as important as what you know. And so it kind of, for me, minimizes some of the issues of, do I know how to create a web page or bill insurance, or, you know, all those things that we think of that are important to building our practice. And just coincidentally, I was watching a documentary a couple weeks ago on Netflix, and Quincy Jones, who I think most of us are probably aware of, one of the most successful record music producers on the planet, was talking about success in general. And he said this, he said, love, trust, and respect. He said, your music can never be more or less than you are as a human being. That's the bottom line. So work on being a good human being first, even before being a good musician. And I think that's really, I mean, that summarized exactly what I felt about this department, that the practice building, the success development, the things that we needed weren't things that could just be conveyed in a 3-unit, 1-semester class, that we should take the opportunity as an institution through all the programs to use the entire time that students are in our programs to help them become more and more successful, become more and more the kind of person that would engender the confidence that their patients would have in them. You need to be the kind of person that your patients or clients will trust with very, very sensitive personal information. And that's something that they'll be able to tell right away. And I've seen that just over the years. I mean, obviously I've seen thousands of graduates now over 32, 33 years. And I've noticed, I watch who's successful, right? And it's not always the A+ student, right? And quite often it's the person who is grounded, who's centered, who's developed a personal style, a certain sense of confidence, right? That certain gravitas, that they know who they are, right? And so that they can be confident being flexible with the people that are around them. And so I won't go on too much longer, but I think that the essence was, let's use the entire time that you're here to work on yourselves or ourselves, right? And be honest with ourselves. What are the things that we need to do better? And use the entire, you know, it's up to 4 years for the acupuncture students, or 2 years for massage, whatever. But let's use that time and support each other, right? This is a supportive environment, right? It's like, let's be okay with telling somebody, wow, I can't believe what you just said, right? Or, you know, you might be get a little further if you act a little differently. You know, and I'm really, really gratified to see so many faculty members here. Thank you so much for coming, because you are going to be the role models for all of our students, right? And that's not to say that we can't learn from our students. You'll see the people on our panel that are students are role models for me and for, you know, our faculty. So it's a two-way street. But, you know, in the same way that we rolled out our evidence-informed practice project across all the curriculum, we want to do the same thing with the goals for the Department of Professionalism. So with that, I'll turn it over to the next speaker. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Jack. I love that idea of love, trust, and respect. I think that every one of us that touches patients, or, you know, even I guess many of us are doing it through telemedicine nowadays, but every one of us that has an impact on our patients, I think we are all always thinking about those traits. Great, thanks for that insight. I'd love to start with Vladimir, who's our student representative here from New York. What are your thoughts on this, Vladimir?
Whoa, no pressure from the guy from New York.
Don't mess it up.
Thank you. Oh, easy, Lamya. Hello, everyone. New York City professors, leadership. Ashley, I see you. Cynthia, Jack, thanks for having me. Stacy Gomes for reaching out. Lamya and Aimee for leading us here today on this panel, and my fellow panelists. It's good to be here with you. Okay, so what does professionalism mean to me? Besides the compassion and patience, tolerance, all of the worthy principles that we shared before, I like to add interpersonal skills to the mix. Interpersonal skills is what fortifies connection with others, right? Interpersonal skills, it's kind of like the teamwork makes the dream work type of deal, where you're able to humble yourself enough to at least put yourself in a space where you're listening to the way others are conveying their messages, and you're remaining flexible enough so that you can be also a part of that space. And so I think that whether you are an extrovert or an introvert, or sometimes I call them a practivert. Practiverts are, I think I partake in that as well. Sometimes I'm an introvert, sometimes I'm an extrovert. It's all about when it's practical, right? So a certain level of decorum comes with that. But it's all part of the equation towards maintaining your professionalism, right? Because you can be great at, being a responsible person or showing some type of sensitivity, but unless you can sort of exude that and have it be palpable to the people around you, where they can build some sort of reliability in your word and dependability in your style, then what have you really? Let's see, it says, how have you cultivated that and how has it benefited you? Well, I can think of moments in our clinic in New York City where I really had to put myself in the place of, let's say, a classmate or someone we were treating in the clinic. And in order to do so, again, you have to really humble yourself and say to yourself, well, this person came here with his or her own outlook on the world, his or her own idiosyncrasies, if you will, and they came here to see me, or they came here to see the team that I'm part of. And so in that, my role in that case is to hold space for that person, right? So it begins with a smile. It begins with, it then extends into my ability to listen, being mindful to what they're saying, to what they're feeling, to what they're expressing with the 4 pillars of how we treat, how we diagnose, and then an adjustability, if you will, to how I help this person obtain their goal of feeling better, or help a classmate with their goal, or a schoolmate with their goal of becoming a better student, better at herbs, better at point location, or whatever it is. And so adjusting the way I see things, adjusting the way I communicate things with the goal in mind is how it has benefited me. It's something that I continuously cultivate through reflection at the end of each day. I ask myself how I could have done something better. Is it even my bag to hold? And in being totally honest with myself, the next day I seek to do things a bit differently. It does not always require a tremendous turnaround. It's just a slight deviation. Perhaps I can listen a little bit better. Perhaps I can somehow communicate to this person that I am here, that I understand, that the way their reality has been shaped does matter to me, and then we can both go on and see to it that we both get something out of it, right? Because that's part of the equation. Both people have to feel as if they're fulfilled within that equation.
Excellent. I love that. The idea of having to have, in order to create that connection, being open, putting your ego aside, getting a sense of, you know, not just with your patients, but also with your counterparts, you know, the people you work with. And I think a really important piece that you mentioned is that self-reflection and then adapting, right? And I think that's inherent into how we think clinically. And I think that has to be inherent into how we're approaching care from the soft side of things as well. Awesome. Thank you, Vladimir.
Well,
I give you a B+, A-. I'm a tough grader. Carrie Clark, Kiera, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this.
Well, thank you so much. And you definitely have given me a great platform to build upon. What I really want to talk about is professionalism in nursing. We are one of those smaller programs, but rapidly growing in Pacific College. So, of course, as nurses, we are viewed as the most trusted, and we are also some of the most ethical practitioners out there. So what helps us to become this in a professional way? And what do we do as professional holistic nurses? So we use evidence and caring theories to help guide us as we make decisions at the bedside. We address the mind, body, and spirit of our patients. And we work with a concept called intentionality, which is a little bit different than setting an intention, but it's all about being a caring, healing presence. We could even say creating a deep transpersonal connection with the other person. And how we get there and how we are able to create these presences is by knowing ourselves, being on a healing journey for ourselves, and really doing things every day to help take care of ourselves so that when we're with the patient, we are truly with the patient. In nursing, we also have some guiding documents that help us to be professional. The American Nurses Association has a scope and standards of nursing practice. That's actually in its 5th edition at this time. And that helps to define the who, what, why, where, how, and when of nursing practice. That really defines who we are as a profession. Additionally, when you get in down to the specialties within nursing, they also have their own scopes and standards of nursing practice. So for instance, the Holistic Nurses Association has a scope and standards of holistic nursing practice. And guess who developed that? Our very own Dr. Carla Mariano. So, and then cannabis nursing also has its own scope and standards of practice. I actually developed the first version of that, and as it has expanded and also gone into the advanced practice nursing role, other people within that organization help to define that. And these documents really provide us with guidelines around things like critical thinking and our professional behavior, how we work with patients, how we work with colleagues, how we work interprofessionally. But what might surprise some people is that all of these documents also call for us to be doing our own self-care, to be practicing reflection, and to be on our own healing journeys as well. And we also have these guiding professional nursing theories that help us also to make these decisions that we have to make at the bedside. So nurses at the bedside sometimes have to make a decision every 30 seconds. So we really need theories, and we really need sort of a framework that holds us professionally so we can create those deep, caring, healing moments and make the best decisions for our patients. And some of the theories that we study in nursing, particularly holistic nursing, might be Watson's theory of human caring. That's what my dissertation was on, or Barbie Dossey's theory of integral nursing. And these really help us to remain patient-centered and to really honor the patient's needs and to meet them where they're at and create that really deep connection that is what we find so valuable as professionals. And as Jack said, yeah, you have to have some professional skills. And in nursing, yeah, you've got people's lives on the line. You better have some of those skills in place in order to keep your license, and nobody wants to hurt anybody. But what we're going to value at the end of the day, what the patient's going to value at the end of the day from your professionalism is your presence and your being with them. And what is the nurse going to walk away with? Really loving about their profession at the end of the day? That's that experience that they have with really being with that person and guiding them. And so I can't really say enough about the importance of self-care, of being able to be present. We also use ethics to help us really make these decisions that are ongoing and constant. So professional nursing ethics guide us, and those are things like beneficence, non-maleficence, autonomy, justice, veracity, fidelity, and integrity. And nurses in the acute care setting are the ones that spend the most time at the bedside. And so it's really all about the patient as well. And one thing that I don't think we've touched on yet about professionalism is really that we all need to be advocates, whether it's for nursing, whether you're an acupuncturist or a massage therapist, you need to be an advocate for what your patient needs, not only in that moment, but sort of in that bigger picture too. So being a lifelong learner and being able to advocate for those patient needs is really important in professional nursing, but really in all of the healthcare professions. And going back to sort of what does this mean for me personally? When I was in my doctoral studies, originally I was going to look at hospice nursing and bedside care, and I ended up looking at Dr. Jean Watson's theory of human caring and relating that to nursing education. And what I found on that journey as I wrote my 400-page dissertation was that what was most important for that professionalism, for that being present with that patient, what was most important for the nurse for making meaning and for the patient for making meaning was that ability to take care of yourself so that you can take care of others, so that it's really evident that you're on this journey together. So part of professionalism is journeying together, whether that's with patients, colleagues, interprofessionally. We are all in this together. We are all connected. And to be true professionals, we have to be able to listen to each other, to work together, and to really keep in mind that what all of this is about doing what's best for our patients and supporting them in their healing journey. Thank you.
Thanks, Carey. I love that idea of journeying together and how that it requires some of the same concepts that Vladimir was talking about, is that self-care and that being present, that self-reflection. And that patient-centeredness. I think that's absolutely inherent and an important part of professionalism. Thank you so much. I appreciate that thought. Self-care is something we don't talk enough about, and I think now more than ever we really need to be conscious of it. I think I've had more treatment in the past 6 months than I've had probably in the past couple of years. So, we have to heal ourselves while we're healing others as well. Yeah. So thank you, Carey. Kiera, I'd love to hear your insights into this.
Yes, thank you. And I think I'm going to echo a lot of what has already been said, but I will put my personal spin on it. And something my students hear me say a lot, maybe to the point of eye rolling, is that as massage therapists, we're using touch, which is really one of the most intimate forms of connection with the patient or the client. And so our boundaries, the B word, which I use all the time, have to be really strong, but we also have to maintain our warmth. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that. I also want to just build on what Carey said in regards to advocacy. Another thing I say to my students all the time is 50% of our jobs is doing hands-on work, 50% is talking about it, right? And really educating future clients, but also other healthcare practitioners about what we do and also what it takes to get us to what we do. Because a lot of people assume it's just like a quick little training without much value, but actually, you're learning a lot of important skills and a lot about the body in the massage program. So we sometimes need to educate others about all of those pieces. So to me, professionalism is the quality of holding oneself and others respectfully in these communities of learning and healing or co-working in order to collaborate towards mutual goals in a safe and productive way. And this holding respectfully is conducted through clear and thoughtful communication. We've heard that word a lot today. Intention and goal setting with appropriate and defined boundaries. And the boundaries piece is important. And so I started teaching, before I was a massage therapist, I was a teacher. I started teaching in the late 90s, and you know, it really taught me very early on, because I started teaching when I was very young, and I was teaching high school, so that it was hard to tell the difference sometimes between myself and my students from just a look, that my boundaries would have to be really strong, but I also wanted to maintain warmth, you know, and connection. So I don't believe we have to sacrifice those things in the process of becoming professional. Sometimes students feel like in order to really hold a boundary, they have to kind of lose some of their humanity. But I think we can allow for our humanness, which includes our flaws, our emotions, you know, and our reflective nature, in order to really be, you know, ourselves and be with others in the professional environment. And so the key aspect to this approach is to really know yourself, but also to understand and know the expectations of the community that you're a part of, or the partnership you're a part of, whether it's, you know, faculty and student, or client and practitioner. And to take part in this constant process of self-assessment. Others have spoken about this as well. Part of this also means owning your mistakes, and sometimes doing so publicly, right? Or in front of a client, or in front of another student or faculty member. And when we all, you know, agree to create this non-judgmental space where others can be themselves and be held with unconditional positive regard, we're all that team, right, of creating this space in which we can be ourselves and admit our flaws, and also help each other, holding up the mirror without judgment, and, you know, supporting each other. So I believe in taking these approaches. I've created learning spaces in my classes and workshops where students feel safe to express themselves and to explore and to grow. People have to feel safe, really, in order to do that exploration. And that dynamic also exists in my one-on-one relationship with clients, where I really view our work as a team, so that together we set the expectations and goals and determine the best method of communication through both words and the touch therapy. And to me, the benefits of taking this approach have been having these long-standing relationships with many, many students over the years, students who've become graduates and colleagues in the field, as well as my clients who, you know, have these long-term relationships and see people through different aspects and phases of their lives, and keeping them engaged in that therapeutic relationship so that they can feel confident and secure in referring other friends and family to my care. So I'm really grateful to share my input with this group and to hear what other folks have to say today. So thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Kiera. I love that idea of the advocacy and the educating. I think that's such an essential part of creating a strong relationship, and allows us to grow. I also love this idea of owning your mistakes, but like you said, creating a context where people feel safe. I think that was something that I hear from a lot of students, where sometimes they feel safe, sometimes they don't, and how it's such an important piece of growth and comfort. I always quote Aimee, I always quote you when we talk about how professionalism isn't perfection, right? And being very comfortable with the fact that you don't have to be perfect to be professional. And in fact, you're almost seen as more professional if you're honest about mistakes that you've made and you come clean about that. And it sounds like it's made a huge difference in creating long-term relationships, and therefore a successful practice for you, both as a teacher and as a practitioner. Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that, Kiera. And last but certainly not least, we have Dr. Rubero. I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Dr. Rubero, you're muted.
Sorry about that. Thought I could unmute myself a little faster than I actually could. So evidence that professionalism is not perfection. I just want to say thank you to everybody in the audience first for being here, and thank you so much to my fellow panelists for all of your amazing responses. Again, I don't think I'm going to say anything new But, you know, here's my take on professionalism. You know, it's definitely a level of dedication to whatever it is that you're doing. And it's a commitment to yourself that you're giving your best effort to whatever it is that you're doing. You know, one of the comments I was reading, you know, says that professionalism kind of varies depending on situation. It depends on, you know, what exactly we're doing, right? Like a lot of us are practitioners or future practitioners, we're faculty members. But, you know, being a professional in those situations is obviously a lot different than, you know, being a professional parent, right? Like, Lord knows that's a full-time job. It's definitely something that we have to take very seriously. So regardless of what it is, whatever it is that we're doing, we can be dedicated to it. We can be committed to ourselves that we're going to give it our best effort, that we're going to continue working no matter what to master the skills that we would need to do that thing well. I feel like I've cultivated professionalism by staying curious. I have a wide background in healthcare. Like many of the other panelists, like I study and serve human health, and I facilitate others' study of human health. I'm really privileged to study an ever-changing field like that. You know, I never get bored. Nothing's ever stale. To me, that's kind of how I maintain that, right? I'm constantly curious. There's always more questions to be answered. You know, recognizing that I don't know everything, right? Like, it doesn't take perfection. It just takes curiosity in my mind to get the answers, right? So I benefited by approaching professionalism in this way, in that the work I do is, you know, like I said, constantly evolving and never feels stale. Every single patient interaction, every single student interaction, those are like learning moments, right? Like I get to correct on the fly, the way Vladimir said, like having that self-awareness of what's going on with my interaction with this patient. Is this going as well as I would like it to? Am I connecting with this patient? Are they understanding the message I'm trying to get across? Same with students, right? Like, am I teaching you this well, right? Like if I come back I get a test back, and I see that everybody missed this question, like, okay, how did I not communicate this information to you all, right? Taking that time to self-reflect and say, what can we do better? That's, again, like, that's a commitment to me, that's a commitment to my students that I'm gonna make, that I'm gonna do this with as much integrity, as much care and concern as possible.
I love that. I love the idea of staying curious. I think that was mentioned a few times now as being really a foundation of professionalism. You know, that I always think about part of my role outside of Pacific College is hiring folks on my team. And I'm always thinking when I'm assessing them, are they humble? Are they hungry? Are they smart? And I think that when we kind of put together everything that has been said today, these are all really baseline ideas of success as a clinician and a success from a standpoint of professionalism. Yeah, thank you, Tulia. Perfect. Well, we have before we kind of convene, I'd love to hear if anyone has any questions, or if you, somebody had put out a statement asking about the framework under which we are understanding professionalism. Some spaces may be different than others. I think you're exactly right. And Aimee, you kind of responded a little bit in the chat, but for those of you who aren't reading that, I'd love to hear what folks have to say about that. If anyone on the panel, if you have any insight into your thought about, you know, the difference of different spaces and how professionalism manifests.
I'll jump in on that. I appreciate the comment. I think it is relevant. I think overall, in this particular discussion, the context is our professional activities, right? How we are as nurses, acupuncturists, massage therapists, health coaches, how we are as students of those programs as well, how we are as faculty or administrators, that if we wanted to limit it to this particular project, it would be in that way. But I think what's probably most important is that part of this project is to look for the universals, right? The things that are going to be applicable in any situation, right? And I think, you know, many of the speakers have already hit on some of the things that I think we might agree are universals, right? Good listening skills, right? That self-reflection, the ability to admit our mistakes. Those are going to be relevant whether we're, at a party, or whether we're, engaging in a sport, or whether we're actually, working with our patients. So I think the context is certainly important, certainly relevant to things like appearance, right? I mean, if I showed up like this for a audition for a hard rock band, they'd like, oh, this guy's out of it, right? But still, if I was listening and being sensitive to the situation, that would always be appreciated.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're right that one of the big themes we want to talk about was how this can kind of permeate every field, but also every level, right? We have students, we have staff, we have faculty, we have administration. What are the things that are really universal that we want to ensure that are being integrated within the system as a whole, not just in our coursework, but institutionally? How can we see these traits being taught and being supported too? I kind of go back to what you're saying, Kiera, about creating this safe environment. I think it's really important.
Did we lose Lamya? She froze for me.
I think we did lose her. There she is.
Oh.
We lost you for a second there.
I mean, the best point. You guys missed it. Amy, you could go ahead and respond. Yeah, but how can we grow together? How can we create a safe space? That I was getting at. Good. Do we have any other questions that anyone has?
Just Lamya, I want to thank you for making that statement about growing together, and everybody else that mentioned that. For me, as in my role as president, nothing would be more rewarding to me than to feel the institution together in the desire to grow personally, individually. That would make my career.
Awesome. Yeah, Prashant, I think you asked great question. This is something that we will be instituting into our teaching or classes. So it's like you're a plant. Sort of the next thing we want to talk about. I think Jack made, oh no, am I cutting out again? Yeah. So Jack made a comment about, having this be a part of, from an institutional perspective, both in a course learning objective perspective, but also an institutional learning perspective. And that's kind of the next phase that we're working on as a department. Aimee and I are working on, obviously with the help of many folks. And we'd really love your insight. And if there are people who are really engaged and excited about this, we'd love to have you in working groups. We've kind of created this department in a grassroots manner, and we want to continue that because everyone comes in with something beautiful and insightful and different. And we want, we don't want us all saying the same things, right? We want a little bit of difference of opinions and insight and experience. Yeah, so that's actually some of the next steps we're working on is creating some course learning outcomes as well as some institutional learning outcomes so that it really permeates every space within the college. Yeah.
If students could add to the thread or just email administrators the kinds of activities they would like to see, right? I mean, would journaling, would role modeling, difficult encounters, what kind of things could we have in multiple courses throughout the curriculum that would engender this kind of self-development? Because I think that's really what we're talking about, is really personal growth.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And Cynthia made a point where often the people that need it the most are the least aware of it. And that's true. It's true myself. We don't see our blind spots because they're blind spots. But in a supportive environment, if someone could say in a compassionate, loving way, here's what I see you're doing that's not working so well for you in a social environment, personal environment, professional development environment, whatever it happens to be, nobody's going to like hearing that, right? But if it's done right, most people can accept it, especially if they're given a night to think about it and sleep on it. So that's what we'd like to see amongst each other, I think.
I think there are a lot of opportunities to incorporate feedback in the programs, in all the programs. And that is something that I know we try to do in the massage program in New York, but I think it's something that could always be expanded upon. And that, you know, those who have a little more experience with how to give constructive feedback and compassionate feedback can support those who haven't had those experiences, so that we can, you know, continue to foster that kind of community where people are, you know, ready and willing to both give and receive honest feedback.
I love that idea. I think it's such an essential part of being a clinician as well, right? Is being able to take feedback from our patients and not have it completely ruin our day, right? Because we need that feedback. In fact, that data is what allows us to make the next decision and move them forward. And I think that's when Aimee and Jack and Stacy and I were all sitting together talking about this, and we had many other deans and stuff, but in one of the recent conversations, we were thinking about, well, what are things we can engender in the school at every level so that this will help more. Whatever
We're losing you again.
is going to be beneficial.
Oh, there you are.
Oh man, the internet's just being tough in Chicago today. It's tough times in Chicago. I was just saying, getting that feedback and learning to accept it and give it is really important in the learning phase. That will then help with.
Yeah, definitely.
I see in the comments here too, somebody was mentioning crucial conversations. That's something that's used kind of widely in the allopathic world to help people to communicate through those really difficult conversations. There are some things I don't like about crucial conversations, but I think having some tools that really help us as a community, and we can kind of know what to expect. Oh, when they're kind of using this language, now I know that we're having this sort of conversation, and creating a culture around how we give each other feedback and support could be really helpful as well. And if that was a commonality across all the programs, that would be a wonderful way to support ourselves as growing in professionalism.
Yeah, there's definitely places for that in the Chinese medicine curriculum, in the clinical counseling classes, and I think some of that is actually happening. And we should look at the other programs and see if there aren't spaces in courses where those kinds of activities can be provided. Because I think that's right, tools, and then, you know, this, and it's not rocket science, right? I mean, some of the basic listening and then open questioning and how to phrase things in a non-threatening way, a non-confrontational way. It's, you know, it can be taught, and probably pretty quickly.
Yeah, Cynthia, I love this comment of how we can structure in some accountability for professionalism. And that's definitely part of the conversation that we're having as well.
Yeah.
Because, you know, when you create a safe space, you can hold people accountable, and it's, you know, people aren't going to be, feelings hopefully will not be hurt. So yeah, that's absolutely one of the things we're thinking about. What other ideas do people have, since we have you captive here?
I think from a student's standpoint, understanding that the type of student you are today is going to be the type of, likely be the type of professional you are later. And I think it was Carey who said that she was always curious. I'm willing to bet that she's been curious for a very long time, not just as a professional. Was it Carey? Oh, Tulia. Yeah, Tulia said it. And so Tulia was probably a really curious student, right? Who cracked open a book and maybe attended a lecture or spoke to people who are smarter than she is, and remained open-minded about who she was and where she wanted to be. So what we see at the student level is that doesn't really permeate at our location in New York City. It's more about being right. And I listened to a podcast on Chi Logic for my, DTD5 class, and this is the first time I ever heard Bensky speak, and I was floored by how personable this gentleman was, how open he was with the information, and he sounded like the type of guy that I can maybe have a beer with. And one of the things that resonated with me is that he said, when you can remove yourself from being right and just be about helping the patient, then you'll be a better practitioner. You see, and I think that message also has to permeate the entire umbrella. It's not being right, it's help. It's helping your students, it's reaching out to a professor. Hey, are you okay? How's your practice doing? You know, it's in the little things in which you can help people, right? And so that's going to bleed right into how you approach patients. Am I trying to help this person? What am I doing? How am I listening? Am I present? Am I thinking about the Giants game? What is it about me? And even if you are thinking about the Giants game, that's fine, right? But then you can go on later on and do some self-reflection and, well, okay, what do I have to do as a person in order to be more present? How can I best have my mind where my body is? And then I can help this person a bit more or in a more efficient fashion. So, you know, I like Kiera, I'm a professional of massage therapy, and I can count to a person in my cohort at Swedish Institute just who they were as students and how they are now as professional body workers. And honestly, they're the same person, you know. So if they were goofing off when we were students, they're either a goof off massage therapist or they're no longer in the field. You see, and there was a gap that existed between what it is, why they even began a career in massage, and what the ultimate goal as a massage therapist was. My ultimate goal was always to make people feel better, right? But it wasn't enough. I had to take some continuing education courses, not because the state required it, but because I knew that my career required it. I had to grow as an individual. It wasn't just about providing a long stroke or pickup of a muscle. It was about really enacting change in the person I was treating. But I had to become a different person as a result. But always as a student, I had that in mind from day one. The moment I stepped onto that campus and I signed up, I knew what it was that I wanted, just like when I signed up for at Pacific to be an acupuncturist and a future herbalist. You know, the goal never changed. It's just how I'm getting there as a person, what type of student I am. I know it's going to be directly linked to the type of practitioner I'll be later on.
Vlad underscores one of the goals that I had in mind with this department, that change, if it's going to happen, will happen slowly in this area, you know, barring sudden, really earth-shattering traumatic experiences. Adults that are willing to change still change slowly and need the time and the support to have that happen. And so Vlad and I are really on the same page also on another thing, and that is the importance of self-reflection. I think if we had activities that fostered that within the curriculum, where students could really, and all of us would, you know, write down what I did today, how'd that go, right? And honestly go, you know, when I did that, it didn't go so well. So maybe tomorrow I remember to be, I don't know, a little more thoughtful or listen a little bit closer or whatever. You know, gradually we create these kind of habits, right? Yeah, so thanks, Vlad. Good stuff.
In nursing, we have a theory from novice to expert, and it's based on, it's written by a couple of nurses, but it was really based on the Dreyfus model of novice to expert. And one of the key things we need to do to become experts is to reflect. So without it having a reflective practice, you will never be an expert, is basically, you can get those 10,000 hours in that people talk about, but if you don't have a reflective practice, then you probably will never truly be an expert, because you won't be growing and expanding and growing yourself and evolving yourself as a practitioner. So I know in the nursing and the MedCan programs, we have quite a bit of reflection, but it'd be interesting to see how it's used throughout all the programs and what works well and what we could do better.
Yeah, I love that idea. I'm taking all these notes, so we can start talking about them as a department. But I agree, you know, self-reflection is inherent to being a great clinician. How do we know how to adjust if we're not reflecting on how things went, right? And so finding a safe space to have those conversations and start thinking about it personally first, I think is really valuable. Yeah, thanks. I appreciate what you said, Vlad and Carey. Thank you, and Jack, I guess too. Yeah. Great. Any other? I'm just kind of reading through the chat here. There's some really good ideas.
Can I jump in for a quick second?
Sharing. Sure. Yeah, we have a few more minutes here.
Hi, I'm Thea McCallion. I'm one of the clinical supervisors on the New York campus, and I've been in and out, so I apologize. I'm treating patients today and could not rearrange my schedule. But I came in at this slide, and it's what stuck with me as a supervisor working with students on a regular basis, the difference between the first few categories on the faculty and staff, and then what the students wrote, and where the top respect particularly comes up. And it's when I came back in, I popped in where Jack was saying togetherness is really important and working together on this. And I think as an institution, the belief that we all come in with a certain professionalism, and where Cynthia said some of us don't know where we don't have it, and I am still growing in that department as well. We're all growing as professionals, but there's like a baseline. I sometimes feel from the students that they don't feel that they have the same level of respect as professionals. And I think that speaking to that in this department becomes important to me, because if we all believe and come in with this idea that we're all professionals, but all learning different levels, then that respect number will disappear. It'll shift, because students will feel respected as part of this process of becoming the next level of professional in the field they're now studying, but that they are still professional to begin with. And many of our students come in with a great amount of professionalism and having been in the work world in a different field, but now they're learning from us the way to be the next level of professional in our field. So I think that, I don't know, somehow speaking to that is really important. And when I talk to the students, I use the Japanese model of senpai kohai, which is senior, junior. In every relationship that we have, there's always somebody that's going to be senior to you and somebody junior to you. And that mentality, if you have that mindset, you always can learn from each other and respect each other regardless. It's just what level you're at in that moment. So I want to see how we can work that in as a part of a regular mindset, especially because it's an East Asian way of thinking and teaching. And I think that would shift that lack of respect feeling that maybe the students see as important. Then again, I might be misunderstanding that. So that's just something that came up for me.
I think it's a really great point. And it is important for us to I always learn from my students. It's the coolest thing ever, right? And from our patients and from the people who work for us and stuff. So yeah, thank you for sharing that, Thea. Beautiful. Well, we're coming to the end here. I think there's been some really incredible thoughts and ideas, and thank you all for taking the time out of your days to spend time with us. As I mentioned before, Aimee and I are working to create some CLOs, so course learning objectives, as well as institutional learning objectives. And we would love your input. So this is our email addresses are here. Please reach out to us if you're interested in any way in taking part in being a part of this discussion and growing our college and our community, right? Everyone who we're working with as students are going to be our colleagues soon, right? And so really moving our profession, acupuncture and all of our different professions forward is really exciting. So thanks thank you all for taking the time. I hope you're all doing well, and you've given us a lot to think about. So,
Thank
Aimee,
you
do you have
all.
anything else you want to mention? Awesome. All right, take care, everyone.
Thank
We
you.
hope to see
Thank
you all soon.
you.